People write things and they say this, they attribute it to Moses. But that doesn't mean Moses is the one who said it.
So where did it come from?
It came from the people, from some
So it just
scribes.
turned up out of nowhere?
No, they actually might have had a process of writing it. But there is no way to ascertain what Moses said 1,000 years from his time. You can dissect it any way you want it, but you will never be able to testify and say for certain what Moses said after 1,000 years of his existence.
You don't think God is capable of preserving his word?
Yeah, did God ever say he's going to preserve the Torah or the Injil? Actually, you'll find that verse in the Quran, unlike the previous versions. That's the beauty of the Quran. Quran, Allah says, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun.
Jesus himself said
That Allah says, no, Jesus never said he's going to preserve the
he
New
said heaven and
Testament.
earth will pass away, not one jot or tittle will pass from the law. That's Jesus.
Yeah, but what does that mean? That means no one should change it.
Well, that's the law.
But
So
people
it's not
did
gonna
change it. People did change it. People have changed the New Testament several times.
Jesus wasn't talking about the New Testament, he was talking about the Torah.
Or even the Torah. So the Torah, for example, I'll give you a very good example. The Torah, the covenant of circumcision was given to Abraham until the end of time.
But Jesus was talking about
Wait,
the law.
what happened to that? Has it been changed? By Paul. Paul changed that particular covenant and he says circumcision is not of the flesh, it's of the heart now. And that is a change in law. And Jesus says anyone who changes even a jot will be the least in the kingdom of heaven. So if you're consistent, you'll agree that Paul is the least in the kingdom of heaven, based on Jesus' own
The
statement.
discussion I was having, you seem to have gone on to a
No, it's
theological...
not. It's all linked. It's
You've
all
gone
linked.
off to a theological point. The point I was trying to make.
It has to, because if you're talking about theological books, we have to bring theology in.
So you're not interested in whether the original manuscripts are preserved?
There are no original manuscripts. What are you on about?
Well, not the copies.
Even the copies are 1,000 years after Moses.
Nobody's denying that.
Okay, so how can you verify it's the exact same thing what Moses
Because I
said?
believe God preserved it.
But God didn't say he was preserving it. Where in the Old Testament did God say he's going to preserve it?
Well, there are references. I don't.
Give me one verse. Or you don't have to quote the exact verse, paraphrase it for me. Go on.
I would have to look them up.
You know what? It's not there. It's not there. Trust me, it's not there. And I can tell you for a fact that it's not there. And this is something, if you look at the Torah itself, if you look at Deuteronomy, is it Deuteronomy? Jeremiah. Look at the book of Jeremiah, chapter 8, verse 8.
But what's happened here?
No, look at Jeremiah 8:8.
Hashim,
It
what's
says that
happened
the scribes, the lying pen of the scribes,
Hashim.
have changed.
Hashim,
Have changed
what's
it.
happened here? I
There you
started
go.
a discussion with you about Jewish books and stuff, and now you're moving.
No, I'm using the Jewish books which you were talking about to prove to you that the Jewish books that you're talking about itself testifies against the Jewish book.
I started
for
a
itself.
discussion saying, do you see that there is any do you see any Jewish influence
No, it's not a Jewish
in the
influence.
Quran?
I wouldn't call it a Jewish influence. The Quran,
Because the
listen.
stories in the Quran. Now let me speak for a minute because you're not
Okay,
letting me
go on.
speak. Because the stories in the Quran, like Abraham and the idols, Cain and Abel burying Abel burying his brother watching the raven. Many of the stories and the stuff in the Quran, right? We have those same stories, right? In early Jewish writings that predate the Quran.
What is the point you're making?
Well, that's the point I'm making.
No, what is the point of
So
that?
do you accept that?
What is the point of that?
Do you accept that?
Okay, so basically you're
Do you
telling
accept that, yes or no?
No, it's not a yes or no. I have to explain
I'm
and
just
tell you.
asking you if you accept it.
No, I have to explain to you. Because many stories in the Old Testament are not.
These aren't Old Testament stories.
Okay, so you're talking about Apocrypha.
They are stories from Mishnahs,
Which are not
Talmuds,
canonized.
and Talmuds, which are not
So you're
canonized
talking
books.
about non-canonized books.
Yes.
Okay. First and foremost.
And the only verse, the only verse I know.
You asked me a question, let me answer.
The only verse I know one verse, which is Psalm 37, verse 19, which is a direct quote from, which appears in the Quran, which is a direct quote from the Zabur.
Doesn't
But
matter.
most of the others,
It doesn't matter.
Most of
You know what? You know what is important for us?
Most of the other stories that appear in the Quran come from Mishnahs, Targums, and Talmuds that were extant before the Quran was written.
Okay.
So can you not see there is a Jewish...
Are you going to let me answer?
Can you not see...
No, I don't. I'll tell you
there's
why.
a Jewish influence
I'll tell
in
you
the
why
Quran?
I don't see it as such. First and foremost, who gave whom the authority to canonize the Old Testament books and the New Testament books?
Well, Jesus himself.
No, Jesus wasn't there in the Old Testament time. So I'm asking, let's answer the Old Testament because you brought the Old Testament in. Who gave them the authority to say these books should be in the canon and those books should not be in the canon regarding the Old Testament?
I'm trying to answer your question, but you're not letting me.
Yeah, but Old Testament.
No, we're not
I'm talking about the Old. You brought in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Don't say you didn't.
I'm talking about Jesus.
No, I'm talking about the Old Testament.
Jesus himself, right, acknowledged the canon of the Old Testament.
Are you going to answer my question or not? Who gave anyone the authority to either put in or take away books?
Well, my money's on Jesus.
Let me finish the question at least. I know your mind is.
If my money's on Jesus.
You need
Jesus says
you need to understand the question before.
Jesus said these books are authoritative. I would accept.
Oh really? So show me where Jesus says every book in the Old Testament is authoritative.
Because when he quoted, he said, "From the righteous blood of Abel to the blood of Zacchaeus."
What about that? What is that got to do with the books?
I'm trying to answer.
Yeah, go on.
Well, blood of Abel appears in the first book of the Jewish Tanakh.
Yeah, and
the blood of Zechariah appears in the last book of the Jewish Tanakh. So he's saying, I'm talking from the beginning to the end of the Tanakh.
No, that's your reading. That's your reading into it.
That's my reading.
Okay, let me ask you this. You mentioned about the books in the Old Testament, and then you mentioned about books which were not in the Old Testament. Okay, which according to you are not the non-canonical versions, yes? The Apocrypha, whatever you want to call it.
But the point I'm trying to get
No, listen, look, your problem is you don't listen to the question. Try to understand the question because you somehow are fixated on Jesus only. I'm asking you about the Old Testament. Listen.
My question to you
No, you're
thinking
thinking of the next question or the next answer before even listening to the question I'm asking you. So please focus and listen to the question this time. The Old Testament was canonized at some point in time. Do you agree with that?
My point to you is not about the canon of the Old Testament.
But my point is,
that's not the point.
So can you at least
That is not
can
the
you at
point.
least give me the opportunity to ask you?
Well, because it's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Okay, what is it you're talking about? Go on.
What I'm saying to you
Listen
is,
carefully, everyone. I want
Quran, my contention is, right, and it's a contention that's been made for many, many decades, well, hundreds of years, right, is that the Quran borrowed from Jewish sources, which were Talmuds, Mishnahs, and Targums.
which are canon or non-canon?
They're non-canon.
Good. So you're talking about the canon. Thank you. Finally, you're talking about the non-canon books, which is exactly what I asked you.
Well, do you think they were canon?
No, I didn't say they were. I'm saying that is exactly what I asked you. Who gave them the authority?
Is a Talmud a canonical book?
No. Who gave them the authority?
Is a Targum a canonical book?
If you don't want to answer my question, then why should I answer yours?
Is a Mishnah a canonical
Why should
book?
I didn't say they were.
Right.
Don't make this strawman arguments.
So that's what
If
we're
you're
talking
talking, look, if you're talking about non-canonical versions from the Old Testament, the question is a fair question to ask you, who gave them the authority to exclude or include the books in the Bible, in the Old Testament?
Well, the Jews don't accept Mishnahs are not accepted.
That wasn't my question.
No, but this is the answer.
See, again, you're doing the same thing. You're not listening to the question. You're answering something I didn't ask you.
Have we got any Jews
If I
that-
ask you, is the grass green over there? You're telling me, hold on, the sky is very high. You know, that wasn't my question. My question to you is very simple. You have canons of the Bible in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Who gave anyone the authority to exclude or include books in the Bible?
I think it was a process.
And who authorized that?
God.
Where does it say in the Bible that they were authorized? Can you, wait, before you do that, name me the person who actually was involved in canonization.
But you're still missing the point.
No, give me the name. Let's see if you even know the name of the person.
You're running to this issue.
No, I'm not.
And this is
I'm
not.
not.
What
It's
we're
very
talking
important
about.
because, you know, for us, the Quran is the authority.
We're
The
not-
Quran is the book. So regardless of whether the Old Testament existed, whether the Talmud existed,
gonna have to-
whether the Mishnah existed, for us it's all irrelevant. Even if, listen,
why is it irrelevant?
In fact, I'll go even further. I'll say even if they did exist in the original form today, for us the Quran is the one which takes precedence over all those previous revelations. Because the Quran is.
But the point-
Wait, I haven't finished. The Quran says, in the Quran Allah says this is a muhaymin. This is an overseer of the previous revelations. So it basically identifies what is accurate and what is inaccurate from those previous revelations. It takes precedence over all previous revelation.
Hashim,
So wait,
I will try to
I
make
haven't
my
finished.
point
I haven't
again.
finished yet. If the Quran has a parallel story, which is either in the canonical versions or the non-canonical versions, for us the Quran is the one which is the true, regardless of.
Do you accept that the Quran has stories that appear in Talmuds, Mishnahs,